My mom told everyone my dad abandoned us. He didn't. And when I exposed the truth, I exposed everything else too. A year later, she showed up at my door, saying she'd changed. Growing up, I honestly believed that women were always the victims. That's what my mom drilled into me, over and over again. But what she said and what she did were two completely different things, especially when it came to my older sister, Emma. She was constantly blamed for not doing enough. One time, when Emma was just 9, she set up a little yard sale, sold her toys, her books, and managed to make nearly $100. I thought that was amazing. But at dinner, when she proudly told the family, my mom just stared at her and asked, "Why didn't you give any of that money to your brother?" I was 8 at the time, and even I knew that wasn't right. So I said something, quietly. I told her, "Mom, that's not fair. She earned it." My mom snapped. "Don't talk back." Emma immediately pulled $20 from her pocket and handed it to me. My mom still wasn't satisfied. She ordered her to give me 80. That night, I heard Emma crying through the wall. The next day, I spent the money buying her favorite candy, some chocolate, and a small Lego set. When I surprised her, her whole face lit up. She hugged me so tight I thought I'd break. But then we heard it. Footsteps storming up the stairs. My mom burst in. "What is this?" Her voice shook the room. "Didn't I tell you not to be selfish?" Before Emma could say anything, I stepped in. She didn't ask me to buy it. I just wanted to make her happy. Suddenly, my mom's tone flipped. She turned to me, smiling sweetly. "You're such a kind boy," she said, lifting me into the air. "But don't waste your kindness on her again. If I ever catch you doing that, you'll regret it." I nodded, but inside I was scared. Scared of her. And from that moment, something shifted in me. I started seeing Emma the way Mom did, like a problem to be fixed. Whenever there were chores, I'd yell for Emma to do them, even if I'd made the mess. If my room was a disaster, I told her it was her job to clean it. I wasn't mad at her. I just thought, this is what Mom wants. Maybe this is what love looks like. Emma slowly faded. She smiled less, ate less. I'd hear her crying at night, and I did nothing. Because in my head, I thought, if only she could be more like me, maybe Mom would stop being cruel. I didn't know what scapegoating meant back then. I didn't even understand the word sexism. I just believed Emma was the problem, until 7th grade. I won 2nd place in the school science fair. Mom was thrilled. She took me out to eat every night for a week. Pancakes, syrup, smiles. Emma saw all that. The next year, she gave it everything she had, isolated herself from friends, studied nonstop, and she won. 1st place. Gold. She came home glowing. "Mom, I won!" she shouted. "So did your brother," Mom replied flatly. "But I won gold. I worked so hard," Emma insisted. My mom rolled her eyes. "No one likes a show-off." That was it. I couldn't stay silent anymore. "Mom, you should be proud of her," I said. Her eyes locked on mine. The room went cold. She walked over, lifted her hand, and slapped me so hard I hit the floor. "Don't you ever take her side again." I looked at Emma, and for the first time, we both saw it. Not just the pain, but the truth. She wasn't misunderstood. She was cruel. From that night on, we whispered in the dark. Late-night conversations, quiet footsteps in the hall. We became a team, a silent rebellion. We didn't have a plan yet, but we knew one thing. The truth had been buried long enough. And we were done being silent. I knew my mom had done a lot of horrible things to Emma, but I wasn't prepared for how thick that notebook was. Page after page, everything she'd endured. The next day at school, I couldn't focus. My cheeks still stung from where Mom had slapped me the night before. But it was more than that. It was the weight of realization. I'd spent years being her golden boy, her little soldier, and now I felt sick about it. All the times I yelled at Emma, bossed her around, dumped chores on her, thinking it was normal, thinking I was doing the right thing. I decided right then, I was done playing her favorite. When I got home, she greeted me with a plate of fresh cookies like nothing had happened. She ruffled my hair and called me her special little man. I didn't say a word. I grabbed a cookie, walked upstairs, and left her standing there. Emma was in her room, doing homework. She looked up, clearly shocked. I hadn't willingly stepped into her room in years. I sat on the edge of her bed and said one word. "Sorry." That's all I could manage before the tears started. She didn't speak. She just moved next to me and wrapped her arm around my shoulder. We stayed like that in silence. Everything felt different after that. I started noticing how Mom talked about Emma behind her back, telling neighbors she was moody or going through a phase, then turning around and praising me like I was some kind of genius. I used to take pride in that. Now it just made my skin crawl. One Saturday morning, she made pancakes, just for me. Told Emma there wasn't enough batter left. Emma didn't even flinch. She quietly made toast and sat down. I stared at my plate for a second, then slid half over to her. She shook her head. I insisted. We split them. When Mom came back into the kitchen and saw, her eyes narrowed. That was the look that meant payback was coming. Sure enough, that night she stormed into my room, said Emma was turning me against her, that I had to be stronger. I nodded, waited her out. As soon as she left, I texted Emma, "She's unhinged." It was the first time I'd ever put those words into writing, and it felt like something inside me cracked open. After that, she got more controlling, checked my phone, barged into my room without knocking. One day, she followed me to school and watched me eat lunch from her car. I told my friend Daniel, and his face said it all. He just said, "Dude, my mom would never do that." That's when I knew this wasn't normal. Emma and I came up with a system. We started leaving notes for each other tucked into an old Harry Potter book on the shelf. Mom never touched it. In those notes, we documented everything. Every cruel comment. Every time she praised me and ignored Emma. Every little lie she tried to plant between us. Then one day I came home to find Emma locked in the bathroom, crying. I finally got her to open the door. And I froze. Chunks of hair were missing from the back of her head. She said Mom had yanked her backward for forgetting to take out the trash. I took a photo. Emma begged me not to say anything. I nodded, but I couldn't sleep that night. All I could think was, what if this keeps getting worse? For years, Mom had told us Dad left because of Emma, that he couldn't handle her attitude. But now, I wasn't so sure. What if he left because of Mom? The next day at school, I went to the guidance counselor. I didn't tell her everything. Just said things were tense at home, and I was worried about my sister. She gave me some brochures, talked about family counseling. I knew Mom would never agree to that, but I took them anyway. When I got home, she was already going through my backpack. She found the pamphlets and exploded, ripped them up, screamed about how I was betraying the family by talking to strangers. She grounded me for 2 weeks and took my phone. I didn't argue. I slammed the door and shut her out. Later that night, Emma snuck into my room with a granola bar and an apple. Mom hadn't let me eat dinner. We sat in the dark, and she whispered, "We need to get out of here." I nodded. But how do two kids escape a situation like this? The next morning, she was back to pretending. Made my favorite breakfast, said I was ungrounded, and gave me back my phone. That was her pattern. Explode, then sugarcoat. Blow up, then play the loving mom. I'd seen the script. I wasn't buying it. That afternoon, I ran into Christopher at school. We used to hang out all the time, but I stopped because Mom didn't like his family. She'd say his mom didn't understand family values just because she was a single mom and a nurse. I didn't get it then. Christopher smiled like nothing had changed. He asked if I wanted to come over after school to play video games. I said yes, without asking Mom. It was a tiny choice, but it felt huge. When I walked into his house, I saw something I hadn't realized I was missing. Pictures. Real, happy photos. Christopher and his sister, making silly faces, hugging, laughing. Not stage portraits. Not, "Look how perfect my kids are" displays. Just love. And it made me wonder, for the first time, what would our lives have looked like if Mom had just loved us the way we deserved? At our house, every photo frame was perfectly curated, with pictures of me smiling on cue. Emma's school photos, they never made it into the frames. They just disappeared. When I visited Christopher's house, everything felt different. His mom, Cheryl, was nothing like ours. She welcomed us with snacks and genuine questions about our day. Questions that didn't feel like traps. When Christopher's sister, Erin, walked through the door, Cheryl didn't compare them. She didn't make snide remarks. She just ruffled Erin's hair and asked how her math test went. Erin admitted she was disappointed with a B+. "You worked hard and I'm proud of you," Cheryl said. "Want to go over what tripped you up later?" I sat there quietly, stunned. That was it? No judgment? No, "you should have done better"? Just love? Honestly, I didn't want to leave. But when I got home, Mom was already at the door, arms crossed, foot tapping like a ticking bomb. She'd called the school, found out I wasn't in detention, and the second I stepped inside, it started. One rapid-fire accusation after another. Where were you? What if you got kidnapped? Is this how you repay me? I didn't even try to answer. I just stood there until the storm passed, then went upstairs like a ghost. Emma was waiting in my room. Her hands were shaking as she twisted the hem of her shirt. I told her everything. About Christopher's house, about how normal things felt over there, and how alien that kind of love seemed to us. That's when she pulled out something I never expected. A letter. She'd hidden it for years, tucked inside the lining of an old teddy bear. The envelope was yellowed and creased. Her hands trembled as she passed it to me. I never opened it, she whispered. I was too scared. Maybe we could read it together. I nodded. My throat went dry. We didn't know what was inside, but something told me it was going to change everything. We opened it together, barely breathing. It was a letter from our dad, dated 3 years after he'd left, but he hadn't walked away. Not by choice. He wrote that he'd been trying to reach us for years, but Mom had filed a restraining order against him, with false accusations. He said he missed us, that he never stopped fighting. At the bottom, there was a phone number and an address. Emma and I stared at each other, shocked. Everything Mom had told us, about him abandoning us, about him not caring, it was all a lie. She'd taken away the one person who might have saved us. I felt nauseous. All the times I heard her say, "Your father left because Emma was too much," and I believed her. We heard her footsteps coming up the stairs. I quickly shoved the letter under my mattress. When she barged in, we were sitting with open books, pretending to do homework. Her eyes narrowed. She told Emma to go to her room. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the letter in my head, wondering, was Dad still waiting? Would he even pick up after all these years? I couldn't use my phone. Mom checked it too often, so the next day during lunch, I borrowed Daniel's. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hit the buttons. It rang 4 times. I almost hung up. Then a man answered. Hello? I froze. Then I said it. Is this Thomas Elliot? A long pause. Then I heard him crying. I told him who I was. We only had a few minutes before lunch ended, but in that short time he confirmed everything. He said he'd been trying to win custody for years, but Mom twisted the system. He asked about Emma. I told him she was okay, but things at home were bad. Really bad. He promised he'd help us. But we had to be careful. He said if Mom felt threatened, she could become dangerous. We agreed to talk again the next day. I promised to tell Emma everything. When I got back to class, I couldn't focus. For the first time in forever, I felt hope. Real, electric, terrifying hope. After school, I rushed to find Emma. We hid in the library stacks, and I told her everything. When I mentioned Dad cried when he heard my name, she couldn't hold it in. Tears silently rolled down her cheeks. She said she'd always hoped he would come back someday. Now, maybe he could. We agreed to call him again the next day. This time, together. That night, dinner felt strange. Mom was watching us like a hawk, that fake sweet tone back in her voice, fishing for details. Emma and I stuck to short answers. I pushed food around on my plate and pretended to have a stomach ache. She told me to go lie down. I didn't argue. In my room, I read Dad's letter over and over. Then I memorized his phone number, just in case. I hid the letter again, deeper this time, tucked into an old math book I knew Mom would never touch. The next morning, we met again in the library. This time, we borrowed Noah's phone. When Dad answered, Emma finally spoke. Her voice was so soft. But she said his name. And for the first time in years, she wasn't just speaking to a memory. She was speaking to her father. Through quiet sobs, Dad told us he lived in Westfield now, worked as an electrician, and had a spare bedroom just waiting for us. He wanted us to come live with him, but it wasn't that simple. Because of the restraining order Mom had filed years ago, he technically wasn't supposed to contact us at all. She still had full custody, and if we tried to run away, we knew she'd call the police and spin the story however she wanted. Dad suggested we speak to a trusted adult at school. He said if we could show proof of what had been going on, it might finally help him win custody. We promised to think about it. That weekend, Mom said she was spending the day at Aunt Karen's. As soon as her car disappeared down the road, Emma and I sprang into action. We tore through the house, searching for anything we could use. Evidence, records, anything that could prove the truth. In her bedroom closet, behind a pile of old photo albums, we found a locked metal box. Emma remembered the tiny key on Mom's keychain. We couldn't get to that, but I'd accidentally locked myself out of my room enough times to know how to use a paperclip. 10 minutes of nervous fiddling, and I finally heard a soft click. Inside the box were letters from Dad's lawyer, photos he'd sent us over the years, pictures and birthday cards we'd never seen. Then Emma found it, a copy of the restraining order. And it was worse than we thought. Mom had claimed Dad was dangerous, abusive, unstable. She even got her friends to sign witness statements. Pure lies. We took photos of everything, every card, every document. Then we carefully put it all back, locked the box, and tried to make the room look untouched. But just as we were sliding the box back into place, we heard the front door open. Mom was home, early. We froze. I shoved the box back into the closet, gently shut the door, and told Emma to hide while I created a distraction. I darted out just as Mom was reaching the top of the stairs. I pretended to come out of the bathroom and asked about Aunt Karen like everything was fine, even though my heart was hammering in my chest. She eyed me suspiciously but walked past me into her room. I heard her opening drawers, getting close. Panicking, I went to the stairs and faked a fall, tumbling down a few steps with a dramatic yell. She rushed out instantly, and while she checked if I was okay, I saw Emma slip out behind her and disappear into her own room. That moment, I had never felt more relieved in my entire life. For the next few days, Emma and I kept our heads down. We were careful, cautious. At school, we continued talking to Dad using friends' phones. He told us he was working with a lawyer and that the photos of Emma's injuries and our documentation could help, but that having an adult witness would make all the difference. We decided to trust Ms. Patel, our guidance counselor. We visited her during lunch. Emma brought her journal. I brought the photos. We told her everything. Ms. Patel's face grew more and more serious as we spoke. She explained she was a mandated reporter, which meant she had to alert Child Protective Services. Emma and I exchanged looks, nervous, but also a little relieved. We were terrified, yes, but we couldn't keep living like this. Ms. Patel brought in the school principal, Mr. Greer. We had to tell the whole story again. He asked if we felt safe at home. We hesitated. Truthfully, we didn't. But the fear of what Mom would do if she found out we'd told someone, that fear was bigger. We said we thought we'd be okay for now, if we didn't give her any reason to suspect us. Mr. Greer nodded and said they'd file the report that afternoon. He warned us that someone from CPS would probably visit our home within a few days. The idea of that made our stomachs twist. That night, Mom was all smiles. She ordered pizza, told Emma she could pick the movie. She laughed, acted sweet. It felt so wrong, like she knew something was coming, like this was just the calm before a storm. The next day after school, a woman was waiting in our driveway. She introduced herself as Stevie from Child Protective Services. My heart dropped. We hadn't expected it to happen so fast. Mom wasn't home yet, and I was terrified of what would happen when she showed up. Stevie asked if she could come inside. We sat with her at the kitchen table while she asked about our home life. She was kind but direct. She wanted specific examples. Emma did most of the talking. I kept checking the clock, counting the minutes until Mom's car would pull up. Emma was just showing Stevie the places where her hair hadn't fully grown back yet. When we heard tires in the driveway, Mom was home. Emma and I froze. Stevie noticed. She gently told us to go to our rooms and said she would take care of it. I left my door slightly cracked. Mom came in, heels clicking, voice sharp. "Who are you and why are you in my house?" Stevie introduced herself calmly, explained why she was there. Mom's voice instantly changed, from anger to confusion, from cold to fake warmth. She said she loved her children, said she'd never hurt them, suggested that Emma was just being dramatic for attention. I heard Stevie ask if she'd be open to letting us stay with a relative while things were sorted out. Mom's voice hardened. No, absolutely not. She said if Stevie didn't leave, she'd call her lawyer. A few tense minutes later, the door closed. Mom called us downstairs. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were ice. "Dinner's in an hour. Go do your homework." She didn't mention Stevie, not a word, but we knew. Something had shifted, and there was no going back. The silence was the worst part. Mom didn't scream, she didn't yell, she just said nothing, and that terrified me more than anything. That night, I woke up to the sound of glass shattering downstairs. I crept out of my room and found her in the kitchen, barefoot, a broken wine glass at her feet, phone pressed to her ear. Her words were slurred and venomous. I couldn't make out everything, but I heard enough. She was ranting about us, about getting those kids in line, about teaching them a lesson they'll never forget. I slipped back to my room, heart racing, and texted Emma. We need to get out. Now. I threw some clothes and a few essentials into my backpack. Grabbed Dad's letter, the Harry Potter book with all our notes, slid quietly into Emma's room and found her already packing. Downstairs, Mom was still on the phone, pacing and ranting. We didn't say a word. We just moved. The plan was simple. Out Emma's bedroom window, onto the garage roof, and down to the yard. Emma went first, crawling across the shingles like a shadow. I followed, barely breathing. But just as I reached the edge, Mom screamed my name from inside the house. She knew. We jumped. We ran. Didn't stop. Didn't look back. The streetlights blurred past us. We had no destination. Only one goal. Escape. Eventually, we reached a 24-hour diner miles from home. We slid into a corner booth, trying not to look like runaway kids. I wanted to call Dad, but was terrified Mom could track my phone. We sat in silence, hoping no one would notice us. But someone did. Her name was Robin, a waitress with kind eyes and a quiet voice. She kept checking on us. Eventually, she asked if we were okay. That broke Emma. She burst into tears. Robin sat down across from us, and we told her everything. She didn't interrupt, just listened. Then she said her shift ended in an hour, and if we needed somewhere safe to crash, we could come to her place. We had no reason to trust her, but even fewer reasons not to. She let us use her phone to call Dad. He picked up instantly, like he'd been waiting by the phone. When I told him what happened, he didn't hesitate, said he'd be there in 2 hours. Those hours crawled by. Emma fell asleep with her head on the table. I stayed awake, flinching at every sound, afraid Mom would come storming in. Robin kept me company, refilling my hot chocolate and sharing stories from her own childhood. Her kindness grounded me. At 3 a.m., Dad walked through the door. I hadn't seen him in nearly a decade, but I recognized him instantly. He looked older, gray hair, deeper lines, but his smile was the same. Emma woke up, saw him, and ran into his arms, sobbing. I stood there, frozen. Dad looked at me, opened his arms. I stepped into the hug. Robin gave Dad her contact info in case we needed a witness. He thanked her over and over. We climbed into his car, tossed our bags in the back seat, and drove away from the nightmare we'd called home. On the drive, Dad explained what this meant. Legally, it was messy. Mom still had custody. He was violating a restraining order just by being with us. But he didn't care. He said he'd rather go to jail than leave us in danger. By the time we got to his apartment, the sky was turning pale. It was small, but cozy. He showed us a room with a bunk bed, something he'd set up years ago in case we ever visited. Emma and I collapsed onto the beds, completely drained. And for the first time in forever, we felt safe. I woke up around noon to hushed voices in the living room. Dad was talking to a woman, his lawyer, Dallas. She was calm, focused. Said we'd taken a risk by running, but with the evidence we had a strong case. She would file for an emergency custody hearing. That afternoon, 2 officers came to take our statements. They were kind but serious. Officer Phillip, especially, paid close attention to Emma's injuries. He photographed the spots where her hair was still thin, the bruises that hadn't fully faded. That evening, Dad's phone rang. It was Mom. He put it on speaker so Dallas could hear. She flipped between rage and fake concern, accused him of kidnapping, demanded to know where we were, said we needed to come home immediately. Dad calmly told her we were safe, and she'd be hearing from his lawyer. She exploded, threatened to ruin him. Dallas just nodded, and Dad ended the call. The next few days were a blur. Interviews, legal forms, meetings. We had to tell our story over and over. It was exhausting, sometimes humiliating. But we kept going, because this was our chance at freedom. Dad was a rock through it all, protective, patient, and always reminding us we weren't a burden. A week later, we had our first court hearing. Mom showed up in pearls and a prim dress, playing the part of the perfect parent. She never looked at us. The judge listened to both sides. Then came the ruling. Emma and I would remain in Dad's custody while the investigation continued. Mom didn't say a word, but her face looked like it had been slapped. As we walked out of the courtroom, she finally locked eyes with me. Her expression was ice. She mouthed something. I couldn't make it out, but I knew whatever it was. It wasn't "I love you." It was a threat. I didn't need to hear what she mouthed to know it was a threat. Her eyes said everything. But Dad placed a protective arm around my shoulders and quietly guided me to the car, away from her poison. The next few months weren't easy, but for the first time, they were ours. Dad enrolled us in a new school. Emma and I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Mary who specialized in family trauma. She was calm, understanding, never pushing too hard. With her help, we slowly began to unpack the years of fear and confusion. It wasn't all progress. Some nights brought panic attacks. Some mornings were heavy with nightmares. But in between were moments. Moments of normalcy. Moments of laughter. Moments that reminded us what childhood was supposed to feel like. Mom didn't vanish quietly. She kept filing motions in court trying to get us back, told anyone who'd listen that Dad had brainwashed us. She even showed up at our new school one day, screaming in the parking lot until the police were called. After that, the court issued an order. No more contact, no more surprise visits, only supervised sessions, which neither of us wanted. And then, the truth started spilling out. Social workers dug deep. Teachers and neighbors told their stories. Robin, the waitress who helped us escape, testified about that night. Ms. Patel shared her observations from school. Even Cheryl, Christopher's mom, came forward and described the way Mom had treated Emma like an outsider. But the real shock came when one of Mom's own friends, Joyce, testified against her. She told the court how she once saw Mom slap Emma across the face at a barbecue, and how when she confronted her, Mom just laughed and said, "She needs to learn her place." Joyce admitted she was too afraid to report it back then. She regretted it deeply. After 6 long months of hearings and court dates, the judge made his final decision. Dad would have full custody. Mom would only be allowed supervised visits, and only after completing parenting classes and therapy. As the judge read the decision, I looked at her, and I watched the mask fall off. For the first time, everyone saw her. That night, Dad ordered pizza and ice cream. Nothing fancy, but it felt like victory, like breathing after years underwater. We weren't naive. We knew the healing would take time, but we were together, safe and free. I caught Emma laughing at one of Dad's corny jokes, and it hit me. I hadn't seen her smile like that in years. Not the forced kind, the real kind. A few weeks later, I found her sitting cross-legged on the floor, flipping through old photos. One picture caught her attention. It was the 4 of us: Mom, Dad, Emma, and me. We looked like a normal, happy family. She traced a finger across Mom's face. "Do you think she ever really loved us?" she asked. I sat beside her and thought for a moment. I think she loved the idea of a perfect family, but I don't think she ever knew how to love real people. People who needed her. Emma nodded. "I'm still mad, but sometimes I feel sorry for her." I wrapped my arm around her shoulder. "That's on her, not us. We tried for years to make her happy. It's not our job anymore." She leaned against me. "I'm glad we have each other. And Dad." "Yeah," she whispered. "Me too." And I meant it more than anything I'd ever said. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of pancakes. Real pancakes. Not some control game. Not some power move. Dad was in the kitchen, flipping them while singing an off-key 80s tune. Emma sat at the table in a messy ponytail, looking more peaceful than I'd seen her in forever. "Morning, sleepyhead," Dad grinned. "Hungry?" I slid into the chair beside Emma. She nudged me with her elbow and rolled her eyes at Dad singing. It felt normal, like this was the way things were always meant to be. School got better too. I made a couple of new friends. Emma joined the science club. She was working on a project about plants or something. I didn't understand most of it, but I understood one thing. She loved it. About a month after the final custody hearing, we got a letter from Mom. Dad handed it to us unopened. Said it was our call. Emma and I took it to our room, stared at it in silence. Finally, I opened it. 4 pages, blaming us, guilt-tripping us, playing the victim, not a single word of apology, not 1 ounce of reflection. Emma asked if I wanted her to finish reading it. I shook my head and crumpled it. She still doesn't get it. We tossed it in the trash and went back to the living room where Dad was setting up a board game. He didn't ask about the letter, and we didn't bring it up. Some things just aren't worth talking about. The supervised visits? They never happened. Dr. Mary said that was common with narcissistic parents. The moment they were told they had to earn their place, they vanished. Part of me was relieved. I wasn't ready to face her. Maybe I never would be. That summer, Dad took us on our first real vacation. Nothing fancy, just a cabin by the lake. We swam, fished, made s'mores. One night, we lay on the dock as Dad pointed out constellations in the clear sky, Orion's belt, the Big Dipper. I thought about how Mom used to say stargazing was a waste of time. She was wrong. About that. About a lot of things. When school started that fall, I was actually excited. Emma was starting high school, nervous but ready. And me? I was in advanced math. But more importantly, I wasn't scared anymore. Shopping for school supplies that fall felt surreal. For the first time, we got to pick what we liked. I grabbed a pack of mechanical pencils that looked straight out of a sci-fi movie. Emma picked out notebooks with nerdy science jokes on the covers, and actually laughed. Things weren't perfect. The ghosts of our old life didn't disappear overnight. I still had nights where I jolted awake in a cold sweat, convinced Mom was in the house, coming to punish us for running. Emma flinched at loud voices, even if they weren't directed at her. And compliments? Gifts? We didn't know how to accept them without feeling like we owed something back. Dr. Mary told us that was normal. She taught us ways to cope, breathing exercises, grounding techniques, how to recognize when anxiety was taking over and pull ourselves back. It helped, slowly. Some days were harder than others. Around Thanksgiving, another letter came. This one felt different. Mom said she'd started therapy. For real. That she was beginning to recognize the harm she'd done. She didn't apologize. Not exactly. But she said she regretted how things turned out. She asked if we'd be open to meeting with her and her therapist sometime after the holidays. Emma and I spent days going back and forth. Talking, not talking. Then finally we asked Dad what he thought. That's up to you, he said. If you want to go, I'll support you. If you don't, that's okay too. There's no right or wrong answer. In the end, we agreed to one meeting. One session, in a neutral location, with both therapists present. No pressure, no expectations. The day of the meeting, my stomach was in knots. Emma was twisting her hair around her finger, a sure sign her anxiety was flaring. Dad drove us to the counseling center and waited in the lobby while we went in. Mom was already there, and she looked different. No perfect makeup, no overly styled hair, no forced smiles. She didn't try to hug us, didn't pretend nothing had happened. That alone was new. She started by explaining that she'd been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. She said she was learning how her behavior had hurt us. She admitted she had favored me over Emma because she saw Emma as competition, for attention. Hearing her say that out loud made me sick. But it was something. Then Emma spoke. She told Mom about the nights she cried herself to sleep. How she spent years believing there was something wrong with her. How she started to hate herself because Mom hated her. She didn't raise her voice, but the pain in her words filled the room. I wanted to say something too, but all I could get out was, what you did wasn't normal. It wasn't okay. That was all I had. Mom cried too. Not like she used to, tears as weapons. These seemed real, but I still didn't know if I could trust them. Her therapist had to step in a few times, reminding her not to deflect or make excuses when she started falling into old habits. At the end, Dr. Mary asked if we wanted to schedule another meeting. Emma and I exchanged a look. Not yet, we both said. We weren't ready. Not to do this again. Not yet. As we left, Mom asked if she could give us something. She handed us each an envelope and told us to open them later, when we felt ready. In the car, Dad didn't pry. How'd it go? He asked. Fine. Weird. Okay, we replied. He just smiled, squeezed our shoulders, and said he was proud of us for having the courage to walk back into something that once broke us. Back at home, we opened the envelopes. Mine had a check for $80 and a note. This belongs to Emma. I was wrong to take it from her. Emma's envelope held a silver locket, our grandmother's, the one Mom always refused to give her, claiming she'd just lose it. We sat on the bed in silence, processing. It didn't erase everything, but it was something. A flicker of acknowledgement. Do you think she's really changed? Emma asked quietly. I shrugged. Maybe she's trying. But people like Mom don't change overnight. Emma nodded slowly. I'm still angry. I don't know if I'll ever forgive her. You don't have to, I said. Forgiveness is your choice, not her right. That was something Dr. Mary had taught us. Christmas came, and for once it felt like a celebration. Dad let us go wild with lights and a real tree. We baked the ugliest cookies imaginable and laughed until our stomachs hurt. Emma got a telescope, I got a gaming system. We gave Dad a fancy coffee maker, which he loved more than life. Mom sent gifts too, wrapped in store-bought paper, generic cards. We opened them, sent obligatory thanks by text, and moved on. Because the real gift wasn't under the tree. It was the peace we'd built with Dad. By spring, we found our rhythm. School, therapy, friends, movie nights. Emma joined the science team and won a regional competition. I got into basketball. Made JV even though I wasn't tall. It didn't matter. I felt like I belonged. We had another meeting with Mom in March. This time it was better. She listened more, interrupted less, asked real questions about school, our friends, what we were into. For the first time, it felt like maybe she wasn't just showing up to fix her image. Maybe she was actually showing up for us. But we were in no rush. Rebuilding trust takes more than words. It takes time. And this time, we were the ones setting the pace. She never used to care about our interests, unless she could twist the conversation back to herself. But now, she was asking us real questions and actually listening to the answers. After that, we agreed to monthly meetings, with therapists still present. They were awkward at times, even tense, but gradually, they got easier. We knew Mom would never be the kind of mother we needed. But maybe, one day, she could be someone we had a careful, limited relationship with. On our terms. In April, something unexpected happened. Dad started dating someone. Her name was Melissa. She worked as a kindergarten teacher, had a loud, warm laugh, and wore the weirdest earrings I'd ever seen. Little pizzas, jellyfish, cassette tapes. She never tried to play mom or give us advice. She just showed up, played board games, made the best homemade pizza I'd ever had. Emma and I both liked her. That alone felt like a miracle. We weren't ready for more family chaos. One Saturday in May, the three of us were cleaning out the garage when we found an old box of photos and home videos. We spent the entire afternoon watching tapes, laughing at Dad's embarrassing 90s haircut and Mom's massive shoulder pads. There was a picture of the four of us at some amusement park. Emma looked like she was maybe 3. I was still in diapers. "You guys were so happy," I said. "At least in these pictures." Dad sighed. "We were, for a while. Your mom wasn't always like she became. The problems were there, but they got worse after Emma was born. She got more controlling, more jealous, especially when I gave either of you attention." "Why did you stay so long?" Emma asked. He hesitated, then said softly, "Because I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen to you if I left. I thought I could protect you better from inside the house. When she finally kicked me out and got that restraining order, I fought hard. But she convinced the court I was the problem." He rubbed his face. "I've blamed myself for not getting you out sooner. I should have seen the signs, fought harder, documented everything." "You're here now," Emma said, moving beside him. "That's what matters." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the old footage, about how it all went so wrong, and whether Mom ever looked back at those same images and felt even a flicker of regret. The next morning, Emma was already in the kitchen, tea in hand, staring out the window. "I've been thinking," she said as I sat down. "I'll never understand why she hated me so much. Or why she worked so hard to turn you against me." She twisted her mug. "But I'm glad we found our way back to each other." I nodded. "Me too. I'm sorry for all those years I treated you like the enemy." "You were a kid," she said. "We both were. We were surviving." She was right. As broken as it had been, we'd both just done our best to navigate the storm we were thrown into. And now, somehow, we were here, on the other side. A few minutes later, Dad wandered in, half awake and heading straight for the coffee machine. "You two are up early," he mumbled. "Everything okay?" Emma and I looked at each other. "Yeah," I said. "Everything's good." And for the first time, I wasn't just saying it. I meant it. Life wasn't perfect. Healing would take time, for each of us. And for our family. Mom was still Mom, still full of unresolved damage. But we were safe. We had Dad. We had each other. And we were finally learning what love without fear looked like. That afternoon, Emma and I took a bike ride through the neighborhood. The sun was warm. The breeze carried the scent of barbecue and fresh-cut grass. We raced down the big hill by the park, laughing like kids who had never been anything but free. For those few minutes, we weren't survivors of abuse. We were just a brother and sister laughing in the wind. And that, I realized, was the real victory. Not just escaping mom's twisted grip, but reclaiming the joy that should have been ours all along. As we coasted toward home, I glanced over at Emma. She caught my eye, smiled, a real smile, deep, unguarded, radiant. I smiled back, and something in my chest finally settled.